So we got Aaron on the call today. He's a member of IBEW 353, member of the executive board. So just gonna kind of jump into it, man. What motivated you to get into electrical, Aaron?
So I worked in the trades basically since when I was about 15. Worked on the sites. My dad was a supervisor, so I had the opportunity to try different trades. I started off as a bricklayer labor. Before I was 16, I was driving a forklift on private sites, not on the roads. But a lot of it was that I got the opportunity to try a lot of trades, at least for a summer, winter breaks, March break, things like that. And so I've been working within the industry for about 21 years, on and off, obviously. But I chose electrical because it was the one trade I had the opportunity to use my head and my hands. And that was something that was really important. I did attend university. I went to Ryerson for biochem. I'm always enjoying learning. That's a really important aspect. But a big component of it is that the sense of accomplishment I got from the trades was really important. So that's when I moved towards the electrical apprenticeship and started off in the low-rise residential sector.
Okay. What kind of jobs you had before this that prepared you for your career?
As I was saying, I've worked many different trades, basically from footings all the way up to roofing. I will never do roofing again. That's just a personal preference with heights. And it was a good opportunity. So basically the only thing I haven't done is dig the hole in the ground. So I've worked on houses, I've worked on commercial units. So I've been part of all the different parts, from bricklaying to framing to drywall, electrical, plumbing. So all of those experiences added to it. Electrical was the one that I felt most accomplished in, and the one that I felt most interested in because of the versatility of the trade as well. There are many different opportunities in many different sectors. I've been in construction my entire career. University, I worked in kitchens, never really worked in retail or anything like that. But always been in that team environment of working. I think that that's a big component of it. You must rely on your coworkers. And so that's another aspect of relying on a team effort. So that has that has always taught me how to work in construction, because you may be doing one individual job, but you're always working in reliance before, after, or during with other trades.
You mentioned a bit, you kind of touched on it, but I like to flesh it out a little bit. Like working in a kitchen, you talked about working in a team. Is there anything else that like you working in a kitchen, that like helped you prepare for this sector?
Yeah, so a lot of it is, so let's just use the kitchen as the example, where it's preparatory work. So each person in a kitchen has a different role, from the dishwasher right to the sous chef. And I think that that's a major aspect. It's just like working on a construction site. When you look at, you have a general foreman, which may be the manager, the kitchen manager, the restaurant manager. And then the responsibilities go down, each responsibility, what you're doing in the kitchen. So you may be from fryer to grill to flat top to the actual cooktop, oven, prep chef. Each one has a defined role. And just like in the trades, each trade has a defined role. Some people are better at some aspects than others. Chef is actually a red seal as well. So anyone that's gone through culinary can also have the RSE accreditation, as I do as a trade. So working in the kitchen, you need to define the roles. Everyone has a responsibility. You rely on everyone while you're working. So it's not a one-person effort at any single time. So that's a big part of, that's the same as a job site. With the job sites, everyone has their role, but I rely on the mechanical trades coming through. I rely on the plumbers. I rely on the concrete, the rebar. Every aspect of the job itself actually does filter back into how my job is done, where my job is done, how quickly I can get my job done on a site. But in reverse, in the kitchen, I can't do something unless someone else has already done their job. So that team effort, that reliance on your coworkers, is really important, and especially working in small kitchens, which was the big ones I did, restaurants and pubs and things like that. That aspect of it is you are in a very tight space. So you have to know your surroundings. There is a lot of safety aspects within the kitchens. You're dealing with heat, you're dealing with knives, you're dealing with people's food. So that is important as to how that influences how you would react on a job site as well.
You touched on you being a Red Seal, Red Seal trade. Can you talk about, voluntary trades, compulsory trade, and where does Red Seal fit into all of this, and what's the difference?
So there's compulsory and then the voluntary trades. The definitions are basically that certain trades you are required to, certain trades you're required to have a certificate within that trade: electrical, plumbing, pipe fitting, HVAC. Most of the mechanical trades, they're compulsory. So you must have the formal apprenticeship completed, and then you must write your Red Seal test, your certification of qualification, to get your journeyperson accreditation. And you cannot be performing work within that trade without having that license or accreditation. Whereas the compulsory trades, some of them, for example, glazier, they have a compulsory apprenticeship. You do not have to have a compulsory journeyperson ticket. Carpenters are another one, so you can follow the formal apprenticeship, but you can be stalled at any level of the apprenticeship if you choose not to continue. But it does not prevent you from doing the work as a carpenter. Your responsibilities may be different because of if you've stalled at a second year or a third year carpenter and you've chosen not to continue doing your proper schooling and testing, you can stay there, but the responsibilities on the site are kept to a certain level that a second or third year apprentice would be working on.
Can you talk about what is, well, first of all, is there a benefit, in your opinion, is there a benefit working in a Red Seal trade compared to a non-Red Seal trade?
Are you saying Red Seal or non-compulsory?
Let's go with this. What is the benefits of working in a Red Seal trade, in your opinion?
So the benefit is that it is a formal apprenticeship. It is a formal testing system. It's a formal education system. Each Red Seal is nationally based on a national criteria. Each province has their own apprenticeship style. Actually, right now, through the different trades, we're working on a national apprenticeship model. We're hoping that one day the government will adopt that so that apprenticeships are portable. Apprenticeships can be from right from BC right to Newfoundland, basically from the Northwest Territories right down to the US border, so that if I'm an apprentice, I'm not limited to the province I live in, which is currently the way the system works right now. But it's your form of education. It's your college education. It is a diploma program when you go through and complete all your apprenticeship. So it is a form of post-secondary education. The best part is while you're training, your apprenticeship the on-site apprenticeship component is an important part of the training. And that is, you are paid while you're working. So you are paid while you're learning, and that's not like most other post-secondary opportunities that we see. Mm-hmm. So that's first and foremost one of the major parts. Plus, we always hear the term jack of all trades, master of none. The major component is there are safety components. There's aspects of each trade. And that is why we go through the training to do those trades. We don't rely on just having a random person running your electrical or doing your plumbing, because these affect not just yourself in the job, but also the public, whoever is moving into the house, whoever is moving into the building, the public access to any of this stuff. So that's another part, is that's how we keep a safety aspect to it, is that you're being trained properly, you are working with someone that's experienced. That's the whole point of apprenticeship and mentorship, is that you work with someone that is been through this. We learn through experience. By trades, we work with our hands, so that's a major component of it. We teach our hands how to do the work, and having someone that's done it before can teach you best practices and the best ways of doing the job.
Okay, thank you. So what should folks know if they're interested in this trade? What should they be keeping in mind, basically? And
specifically electrical or trades in general?
Sorry, electrical specifically. And the other thing is, if you can, sorry, if you can say how long is the apprenticeship pathway once they like to become a journey person?
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a whole process of the intake. Do you want to go over that now, or would you like to? Because that I can get into right through the whole apprenticeship as well, the intake process, and then right through to your licensing.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna steal your screen, share screen for a minute.
Okay.
Let's see if this comes up right. Okay, you got to stop sharing your screen for me too. Here.
Okay,
So we've just changed. It's a brand new system. For those that are not on the computer, I will make sure to show you what's going on. Okay. So everyone can see the intake timeline, apprenticeship.
Yep.
It muted me. There we go. Excuse me. All right. So to start off, to apply, just so everyone knows that the Joint Apprenticeship Council, everyone's heard the term if you're interested in electrical, JAC, has recently changed their name to Electrical Apprenticeship Training Alliance. It is a partnership. We can see GTECA, Greater Toronto Area Electrical Contractors Association, and the IBEW Local 353. This is the IBEW Local 353's apprenticeship. Each IBEW local has their own apprenticeship council or partnership with their contractors, because the contractors are responsible for paying for training for the apprentices. So just to go through it, they've changed their system up. Everything is available on their website, electricalapprenticeship.ca. Actually, the website has been very well revamped. So I recommend anyone interested in the trade do go on it. Right now, we're not getting any, no one's taking any intakes, obviously, because of the situation we're in. But when the process is back online, we'll be able to perform it as it is. So if you look through, you can see that when you go onto the website, there is a spot to put your resume, your transcript, and your transcript assessment. So you can put into your intent of your interest in applying for the apprenticeship. Obviously, your resume, you want to cater as best to any of the practices, any of the jobs that have had things like that team building. They are looking at the perspective of people coming out of high school or people at a younger age, not having a lot of real life experience in the bigger scheme of the workforce, and that's understood. So that makes a major difference. And then you need your proof of the Ontario Secondary School Diploma. So having that, or a transcript assessment, which through different groups, if you have a diploma or you have a high school transcript from a different province, somewhere in the States, somewhere around the world, there are assessment facility, like places that do the assessment and will parallel the programs that you've done to whatever the OSSD requirements are, so that can be submitted. All of that has to be ready and completed before you start applying, because if you start applying and you don't have that ready yet, then you will not be considered or you will not be considered as a candidate because you don't have all the requirements coming into it. So the beginning is the essential skills assessment. It's a simple knowledge assessment. It's an aptitude test, not a mechanical. The mechanical comes later. This is simple math and English comprehension components. And those are based on different levels of expectation. Different trades have different assessments because there's different requirements, and you will receive a result of what you've done, how you've scored on that assessment, as well as they will also give you targeted areas that maybe you need to look at actually working or studying in to get a better result in. So you will be receiving different marks and different ideas, so you know where you stand when you're applying. Once you've been successful with the initial assessment, you are then given a link for the mechanical aptitude test. So that is a little bit more of a spatial sense, a little bit more of an awareness of how things work. It is not specific on any trade or anything like that. The assessment is basically to know that your focus is on you are looking into how things work and what things like the trades will need, their troubleshooting and things like that. And a big component of that is that again, you will be given areas that you may need to develop or study on to get better at it. So you will be getting your results emailed to you. And then step 6, moving into once that aptitude is successful, you will get a job site awareness activity. So there are many different types of these. The job site awareness activity is basically to define if you know where to, what the safety aspects on a job site are. So what dangers to look for, whether it be open egress into floors, if it is overhead dangers, things like equipment and how to be safe with that. That's all simple, very important aspects of the trade, and you need to be able to be aware of those before you ever enter a job site. Then, as well as the job site awareness, they actually have a few questions, and they require a 1-page essay explaining why you want to be a 309A construction and maintenance C&M electrician. The code 309A is just the red seal code for the electrical red seal. So with that essay, it's reflecting on why you would pick that trade over a different trade. Like myself, I was saying that I've worked in different trades growing up. Electrical was one of the ones that I defined as I could use my head and my hands. The theory behind electrical can be complicated at times. You may not use it on a day-to-day part of your job site, but if you want to further your career in very specific fields within the electrical, you can do more studying. There's things like power factor correction and looking at different aspects of systems, and there's estimating and things like that. So to define why you want to be an electrician, someone may say, I'm interested in it, but to show that you've done a little bit of research, what is involved in the electrical trade, what aspect of the electrical trade, why an electrician over a plumber. I can just define that I work plumbing and I will never work on old plumbing again. That was a choice I made as an electrician. And so that's just the parts of doing a little bit of personal research and personal reflection on what you want to see a career, because all apprenticeships aren't just a job. Apprenticeships are career paths. Apprenticeships are lifetime careers if you choose. So that is a big, big component. So then again, after those have been reviewed, you would go to the next step, where you would be given an interview. So the interview would be usually with one contractor representative, as well as a union representative and a representative from the Joint Apprentice or the EATA. And again, there are interview prep aspects on the website. They will go through kind of how they're going to be asking the questions, how to answer the questions formally. They make sure that everyone is very, very prepared for all of that. And then finally, you're put into the application pool. So with the electrical, we used to do a once a year intake, and we found that that overloaded the system and it didn't support the requirements of apprenticeship. So to better begin that, what they've done is once you've been accepted, you're in a pool of people so that when there's phone calls and when there's calls, so which are requests for new apprentices, there's already a running pool of 20 to 30 people that we can start taking people from. So that's then when you get into that waiting period, it's cut down from almost a full year process up to a 12 to 16 weeks. I know that sounds like a lot of 3 to 4 months, but that is actually a lot quicker than the system used to be. So that's something to keep in mind. And then you're rolling through the system as others are going through it. So it actually builds on it. And then finally, when they contact you that you are prepared to, or they are ready to take you on as beginning first year, you must attend a safety and orientation with the electrical apprenticeship and with the union. We host those because those are your beginnings of entering the job site for the first time. So once that's all said and done, you have 5 years to then work on your apprenticeship. It's just over 9,000 hours. We have a 1,800 hour pre-apprenticeship, which is part of this training, so that you work for 1,800 hours, which is your first year. Basically doing supplementary training, additional training. We add that on through our program, through our pre-apprenticeship program, to get the apprentices as prepared for the job sites as possible. And then what happens from there is within your first 2 years of apprenticeship, so 1,800 to 3,600 hours, you prepare for going to your first year of school. We have 3 terms of school. First, basic, intermediate, and advanced. Basic trade school is 8 weeks, and you cover everything from electrical theory to math to code, prints. We have shop aspects, electronics, and then and then you go back for about a year to 2. It depends. Everyone's schedule is slightly different. The apprenticeship timeline is about the same, but when you go to school and when you're prepared, can shift between your 3rd and 4th year, between your 4th and 5th year. So then your intermediate is then a little bit more advanced. You move from the practical hands-on shop, which is a lot of the larger work, a lot of the major system component work, to the more of the motor control, more of the program setting. This is where you start to get into other aspects of the industry. The industrial part of our industry, so ICI, industrial, commercial, and institutional. We electricians deal with a lot of motor systems. We deal with the motors that work in conjunction with the heating and ventilation systems, in conjunction with the HVAC apprenticeships, the mechanical apprentices. So you start to get into those aspects. People don't realize how expansive these systems are, from pumps to fans to machinery. The car plants, one of my teachers worked in GM, and he was on call at night because those systems and how they work with electrical are so integral to how everything runs nowadays. So then you have your advanced trade school, which then gets into more of the programming side of it. There is a digital side to controlling electrical, and this is becoming more prevalent. We're seeing variable frequency drives. We're seeing motor control systems that aren't hardwired anymore. They're electronically controlled. And so again, keeping electricians at the forefront of the industry, this is a major component of your training. So you've now completed your 3 terms of school. You've completed over your 9,000 hours of apprenticeship. The last step is to write your certification of qualification. And so what is going on with that is, with the certification of qualification, the test is a national standard test. You're tested on your knowledge of the industry. So there's safety components to your test, as well as the Canadian electrical code. In Ontario, we also have Ontario amendments and expansions to the code. So, and I brought my fun book, which is, this one's not the dated one, but just so everyone understands that compared to the size of my head, the book is probably bigger. So this is the code book. You don't memorize the code book for your test. You learn to read the code book, and that's part of your training with school. That's included in the supplementary training that we do through our apprenticeships. And so you learn how to navigate, and your knowledge from the trade go into that. Once you've completed your CFQ, which is a 4-hour test, 100 questions, you are then given a result where you've succeeded, where you may not have. And that is where now, if passing that at a minimum of a 70%, minimum 70% pass rate, you are now a certified Red Seal electrician.
How long have you been an electrician?
So I got my license 6 years ago, 7 years ago now. So I would have been 27 when I got my license.
Okay. Can you talk about what is the day in the life like for an electrical?
Okay, so there's so many aspects of electrical. So just to kind of speak on the average job of an electrician is that you, sorry, I'm just moving my screen over a bit. So the different aspects of electrical, like I mentioned, there are different sectors within our trade, and then there are further disciplines and specializations within our trade. You have 3 main sectors when you get into, or 2 main plus the exterior works. So there's the ICI, industrial, commercial, and institutional, which work on public, private, and infrastructure programs and projects. Oops, I'm frozen. I hope you can see me. So now with that component of it, that's work from everything from a hospital. There's a whole sector within the nuclear program through a provincial agreement. So everyone probably has heard of the Darlington upgrades, the Pickering plant that's still ongoing but will be shutting down. That is probably the most interesting systems that anyone will ever get to see, all the way to restaurants, malls, things like that, which are commercial. Now you're looking at sizing of jobs, and then we have our institutional, which falls under the hospitals, the more of the infrastructure base, which also have a lot of rules specifically for them. Then we also have our residential sector, our high-rise, low-rise residential, which is living, where people are permanent residents, not hotels. Hotels have slightly different rules, but with the residential, big component is that there are different rules and different aspects to that. Because in the residential, these are people are using these systems in a very different way. So the way you interact in your house with electrical systems is very different than the way you interact in your job place. So residential has its own set of rules in addition to other standards. And then we have our Powerline Systems, which is the big high voltage. When we're outside, you see your power lines going to your houses, or you may see the bubbles on the side. You're driving down the road and you see the big tall towers. That is the Powerline Technician program, which is actually a voluntary trade. It is not a compulsory trade, which is quite scary, to be honest. But the aspect of it is it still has a formal apprenticeship. Most companies require you to have your endorsement for Powerline Technician, and that is the big outside work. So when we define, depending on where you are throughout the IBEW, we define inside and outside workers. Outside workers in Powerline, there's a mix of 309A electricians and Powerline technicians when working on transit systems, on street lighting and things like that. So on a regular day as an electrician, you could be anywhere from up in a helicopter, dropping out onto the 34,000 volt power lines, to walking into someone's house to cut a hole in the drywall to add an additional plug. That's the versatility and the diversity of the trade. So to define it as one, you show up on the site with all your PPE, which is your personal protective equipment. Each job may be specific and different. You always make sure that you listen to all the safety talks, and then you go out and perform your duties in the job. And then everyone goes home safely at the end of the day.
Okay. What do you find difficult about working in your trade?
Difficulties, I think the whole aspect, I'm sorry, I'm just grabbing a glass of water. I don't find that there's difficulties. I think that there are definitely stressors. You have to be aware that, especially in any trade, a 4 o'clock wake up to a 4:30 wake up is a very common thing. You are normally working at a distance from home. A lot of electricians in the past, it's not as super common anymore in Canada, but we travel for our trade. Construction is not a permanent workplace. It's a permanent career, right? You have your license, that's your job. You get and hone your skills for that job. But the whole idea is that you are, the job changes, you don't. So you may work in a water purification facility, rewiring all the pumps and everything, and then you could go to running fire alarm in a mall. So you have to be able to be prepared, for early wake ups, long days. There's a lot of overtime aspects offered, which is great to have. We have rules around compensation for overtime, but that expectation of the distance, the travel, the ability to be versatile is really important, and it's physical. So you have to have a lot of self-care aspects of it included, because every electrician you talk to, it starts at the knees, goes up the back, into the shoulders, out through the elbows, and then you get arthritis in the hands. So being a younger electrician and speaking with a lot of the old school electricians, making sure that it's not just a story you hear, because I can say from experience, when they say you hit 30 and then your knees start to hurt and crack and pop, it is absolutely true. They tell their past, so learning from that, making sure you're doing self-maintenance, not just physical with your joints and things like that. Stretching before work, it's not something that's common in the trades, but that is something that is extremely needed. Self-maintenance in nutrition, because your body energies are really important. Self-maintenance in sleep and everything like that, because again, you're waking up at 4:30 in the morning. You may not be getting home till 5, 6 o'clock at night. You've still got your regular life to work with, and then you must still continue doing other, you must get up in the morning to go back to work. So there's no go home from work, party till 2 a.m., wake up 2 hours later. You could do that maybe in your early 20s, but it doesn't last. So they're not, I wouldn't call them difficulties as much as personal preferences. I think that it's an understanding that the construction industry is a bit of a roller coaster. There is boom and bust. So it may be very busy at some points and then it isn't busy at others. Seeking out work, it's through the union hall, it's through calls and things like that. So being aware to save your money, be conscious of that you're going to have a very busy time, but always preparing for a slow time. I think that that is all major important aspects. If someone wants that regular 9 to 5, that's not a construction industry job. So there are hurdles to overcome, but I think that if with enough determination and passion, that there is availability for anyone to take those opportunities and take those difficulties and turn them into a career.
I don't, would you mind if I added something?
Please, yeah, yes. Please go ahead.
So it's funny because all the difficult things that Aaron mentions, I found the easiest part of the job.
And can you just mention who's speaking, just for folks who?
It's Tisha. It's Tisha. I'm also a Red Seal electrician. I am queer, female, perceived, and those two things have made the most difficult part of being on the job. So discrimination still happens, although less and less. But I have been overlooked for certain training and things like that, being female perceived, and also being maybe queer as well, might have been an obstacle. But that has always been the hardest. I show up on the job and I feel like I have a target on my back. And when you were talking about earlier, what kind of things prepared me for this career is my military training. When I was in the military, I had a warrant officer who would constantly be on my back and would be, yelling at me, and I'd be the polite Canadian, always say sorry, and say sorry is a sign of weakness. And what I learned from her at that time was I learned how to listen with a filter. And it helped me a lot on the job. And what that means is I was able to let all the not necessarily insults, all the non-essential information kind of filter and stay out of my head and listen to the important information that was being given to me, and work that way. So and within a few weeks often on the job, I proved myself, and people worked hard and didn't allow those things to affect me. And that was my survival tactic on the job. And within a few weeks to a month, I would be respected for my work. And because I didn't really react to a lot of the stuff that was happening, of course, there's always a limit, right? You can't allow people to harass you. You can't be you have to have a tough outer skin, but don't have your limit. Don't let people harass you and treat you with discrimination and such that it affects your life. So a lot of the stuff was just little things that people would try to say to try to get my goat. And so if I ignored it, they often stopped. So so that was probably the hardest part. I could handle the hard work and the grueling hours and the long hours because I worked a lot of overtime. I worked in industrial commercial, so I had very heavy work. That was stuff that kind of almost motivated me. I found it as a challenge, and I was able to get in shape within 6 months on the job, and was able to do just about any job that was out there for me. So the hard thing was the discrimination, I guess.
Tisha, how long have you been an electrician?
I started my apprenticeship in 2006, so that'd be 14 years.
Okay, thank you. So I had to go to, so what do you love about working in your trade? And I had to use this photo just because,
You had to use it at one point.
I had to. At some point, I was just like, I'm just making its own slide. But
so thank you, Tisha. I really appreciate that, because that's some of the social aspects that we don't necessarily always think of. I don't experience as much in the trade. So one of the big things that I love about my trade is its versatility. I'm able to do different things. It's always evolving. I think that is the best part of the construction industry, is we're looking for newer, different, and better ways. Right now, there's a big push. Everyone's getting into the LED lighting and things like that. That's changing the way the systems in our buildings work, how the buildings monitor things. There's a push, it's called PoE, Power over Ethernet, where everyone is seeing the cables that you may plug into a computer. So a Cat5 or Cat6 cable that actually now carries power, has communication for sensors. We have full lights that are plug and play. And that's a part of our industry that may have been ignored 10 years ago, or not as focused. Not ignored, but not as focused. But now it is becoming the standard, and there's a lot of training involved. There's a lot of aspects of that we are now relying on it in a very different way. And I love learning about that kind of stuff. I like looking at the industry, electric vehicles. Well, what is our impact on the infrastructure that currently exists, and what is the work needed to change that? Because if everyone bought an electric vehicle and tried to plug it in tomorrow, our systems aren't built to carry that type of power. So how are we looking to the future? How are we upgrading? What are all those kind of components of it? And I think that is an exciting time. I think we're in a time where we look at the power systems, and it's great to see the basic power systems that we've always accustomed to, but then seeing how we're changing and being at the cusp of power and battery banks and backup systems. 5 years ago, I said that I would never see a battery bank that could carry infrastructure, which is the powers to houses. Now they have full shipping containers that are battery systems that back up microgrids. And these times are so exciting to see the change. And the opportunities, like I said, you can travel for your work. Well, you can go across the country, you can go around the world. Especially electricians from Ontario are recognized as being very well trained. And there is a allyship with other trades that if you're a trade somewhere, you also know how to work in other places, right? You know your profession, and I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud of going places and driving somewhere and pointing out where I've worked, that buildings and houses that I've worked on still stand, which is a good thing. But it's important to know that that's my accomplishment. That's my contribution. That's why I went back into the trades from the sciences. I love the learning aspect, but I didn't feel that I had that sense of accomplishment. I could not touch and see the results that I had. So this is where the trades always came in. And yeah, that's, I enjoy the opportunity.